Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, the post-draft edition. We're a few days past the main event of the spring. I'm your host, John McKechnie. That is Mario Puig. This podcast brought to you by our friends over at Circa. And by the way, if you're listening, if you're watching along with us on the live stream, check out the bottom there. You can get 15% off of any RotoWire product right now. If you go to rotowire.com, use that promo code ROTO15. We will save our 100 men versus one gorilla debate for the end of the podcast, as long as we have time. But we got a lot to get to here today. So basically, we're gonna take a look at some of the teams picking in the top 10, just kind of give our general thoughts on how they drafted, because obviously the draft, big pressing need for those teams. They struggled mightily last year for one reason or another. We'll kind of determine if they did enough over the weekend to kind of change their fortunes. And then we're going to, of course, take a look at the new, fresh best ball ADP market and how the rookies now slot in light of their landing spots being confirmed. So we'll get to that. That will be the bulk of the show. But Mario, why don't we go ahead and start things off at the top? Cam Ward, as expected, goes to the Titans. They add some firepower around him on day 3 as well, with Chimere, Dike and Elic, Ayomanor I believe both of those were 4th round guys. Yes. They also grabbed a edge rusher out of UCLA. They got the safety from Penn State, Kevin Winston Jr., who was, if I remember correctly, hurt for most of this year, but was pretty promising after 2023. Grabbed Gunnar Helm, who was a productive pass catcher as a tight end during his time at Texas. So well spent picks there in the 4th round, and then kind of rounded it out with some depth elsewhere. Also got Khalil Mullings very late in the 6th round. So overall, how did the Titans do?
I think they did pretty well. I'm still not super optimistic about the front office and coaching part of this organization, but or the ownership. But I do think that this talent collection is pretty good. We thought they had an okay collection last year even, but we just sort of we were wondering, how are they going to make all these parts fit together? It seems like they just kind of went and signed all they were in Madden, free agency and franchise mode, and they just clicked descend on overall and just signed the top however many people they could get without thinking about how they were going to use them. But, they got their offensive line looking like it could be pretty good. Not that Dan Moore's a big deal at left tackle, but getting him lets them move JC Latham to the right side. Kevin Zeitler at right guard. Peter Skoronski maybe takes a big step forward. Not that there's been anything wrong with him, but that offensive line could be pretty good. And if your offensive line is good, that you can make pretty much any offensive player who isn't that good look like they might be good. And so if Cam Ward actually is good, we know what Tony Pollard can do. We know Tyjae Spears, when healthy, can do a few things. Even if you're not that high in this receiver group, which I'm still not, I still think they're pretty bad. I still think the Titans need to run the ball a lot this year. And I'm not convinced they put too much on Pollard last year. I'm not convinced Spears will ever really be available on any particular consistent basis. He's just, had bad injury luck. But I do like Khalil Mullings, and I think they just, if anything, they had a power back void. But if you have Mullings and Pollard, and hopefully Spears too, then you don't need to throw the ball much, and you can kind of make it matter less that your receivers aren't that great.
It's true. And I will say that I didn't have a ton of Spears last year, but he was available he was on one of my teams that advanced in one of those best ball tournaments. And he actually had a pretty strong end of the season, especially his game against the Bengals. So, I mean, it's a collection. It's not like a particularly standout group of running backs, but I think, like you said, it's a team that probably needs to run the ball given what they have as far as their pass catchers go. Ridley is the guy. Obviously, Lockett, we don't really know what's left in the tank there. And for as much as I like guys like Dike and Ayomanor, they are day 3 rookies. You got to know
who they got to get going.
Realistic.
They have to get Chigoziem going.
They do.
I'm not kidding. Like, he's good. They should use him more. And they have no one else. He's their most athletic receiver. He's probably like the fastest receiver, in addition to being a tight end in 250 or whatever he weighs. So they should use Chimere Dike to pull the safety downfield, free up some bootleg Chigoziem going the other way. Big plays after the catch. You can get him downfield. There's lots of stuff you can do with that.
I believe Chig is also a big RuneScape enthusiast. I don't want to get this wrong. It's either Minecraft or RuneScape, but one of the two.
It's RuneScape, which I don't even know what that is. I'm old and I don't even know what that one is. That's like Netscape era kind of thing.
I like vaguely remember like some of my like fellow sixth graders back in the day being into RuneScape, but I guess you're in like that, or
I was
like
too cool. I
was
playing Pokemon cards, winning Pokemon card tournaments at recess.
There you go. Strong. So all of this to say, overall, don't overlook the Titans. I think it is kind of like my big,
especially in that
like
division.
Exactly. And it's something where that, Trayvon Walker gets drafted first overall a couple years ago, and it's not very buzzy. This time it's a quarterback going first overall, and it felt a bit like crickets, like over the just I guess because it had been such a slam dunk for so long that maybe
it felt like since like mid-February that pick had been made, something like that.
So maybe there's some fatigue there, but like I'm definitely going to be interested in Cam Ward, and I was telling you before the show, but like a couple years ago, we had no reason to believe that the Texans were going to be good in 2023 when they took Stroud. I took a lot of Stroud just kind of on a hope and a prayer, and it worked out. I don't know if it's going to work out the exact same way for Cam Ward, obviously, but
there's no Nico, but there's a better offensive line. So
important. The team that picked right after them, a divisional rival, Jacksonville Jaguars, they moved up from 5 to 2 to secure the services of one Travis Hunter. There was some discussion. I felt like, did the Jaguars give up too much? And I think ultimately, if you get a legit all-pro difference maker, who cares about your draft picks the next year? Like it's a swing. It's a big swing, obviously, from this first year front office, head coaching staff, everything like that. But I thought that the Jaguars were justified in that. Absolutely.
At the very least, I'm not worried about this being an instance of a team paying a lot for a bad player. There are a lot of examples of that. Not that I have a list available. It's more because there's been too many to remember by now. But teams have traded up or otherwise spent a lot of resources on players who turned out to be plainly awful. And I don't worry about that with Hunter. I do have to wonder, press them a little bit, if only because this is almost the first and the second, and was there something else? The first, second. That's the kind of haul that you normally pay for, like, I don't know, like at least like a Phillip Rivers kind of prospect or something like that. Like it was like probably not Eli Manning. It wasn't whatever the Giants gave up or the Chargers the Giants gave up. But a first and a second from the 5th spot is a lot to pay to not get a quarterback. And of course, The Jaguars didn't need a quarterback, but I'm anyway still a full, I'm an unrepentant Trevor Lawrence truther still, but that just seems like a lot to pay if it's a non-quarterback, in which case is their justification? Well, he's going to be 2 players. So it makes sense. If that's their very specific reasoning on it, then I don't agree at all. If only because it's more risky than they're kind of making it sound like, because it is not at all a given that Travis Hunter can play both sides of the ball. No. There's a chance he can, in the same way there's a chance that almost anything can happen, but it point blank has not happened in the NFL I don't know enough about like the 60s or whatever, whenever Jim Thorpe was playing and they had like whatever, just no helmets and stuff. Maybe there were guys who would play both sides of the ball, because who would want to play a game like that anyway? But I think if we're realistic, given that players like Deion Sanders, Terrence Newman, Charles Woodson, there are others. they were probably able to be really good receivers if they weren't going to be really good corners. And you just don't really train. It's not practical to train for both positions over the course of like multiple training camps, multiple seasons. If you're diminishing Hunter's play at either of the two positions by having him play both, you have to make him stop. And if you're, or scale it way down to more like what Deion Sanders did in Dallas, which he would play like 200 snaps of receiver a year, and then corner for every single play that he could, other than maybe like goal line situations or something. And realistically, I think Hunter ends up playing something like 45 snaps a game on defense and 25 snaps or 35 snaps a game on offense. And even if he's drawing a target every like 6.5, 7 snaps, which I am not taking as a given when Brian Thomas is on that offense, then he's liable to go weeks with no more than something like 5 targets in a game. And he'll have his big games for sure. Travis Hunter will have his big games at receiver, but I think if I had to call it right now, it probably won't really happen except for emergency situations, in which in those emergency situations it'll be great. I just don't know if there's room there for more. And the other thing to keep in mind is an elite corner is worth more than, particularly on an offense that already has Brian Thomas, more than a really good receiver. You don't move Darrelle Revis to receiver to see how it goes. So no. I know the theory adds up. I just don't know about the practice of but again, Hunter will be really good in some way or another. It won't be like, oh, that guy sucks. That's definitely not the issue.
Yeah, no, he'll be a good player regardless. It's just a matter of the Jaguars actually like getting the formula right as to how they want to deploy him. He's certainly being drafted as if he's going to be a full-time receiver, and
he's going like the 4th now or something.
So I for the good of the podcast, I jumped in a slow draft best ball tournament, and he went at the end of the 3rd.
We'll see, man. But I think for that to pay off, he needs to literally never play corner, and even then, I don't think that makes much sense. I mean, that's I don't know. I think fan fiction might be the way we recall the reception of you saw it like about a month and a half ago, or maybe a month ago, on fantasy Twitter. All of a sudden, people just started saying, with no impetus or no basis, hey, what if Hunter just actually played receiver instead? I was like, yeah, man, yeah. What if? Let's see how it goes.
And everyone seems to be in on that, obviously.
Teams love to get elite corners off the field. They're like, God, can I get this guy on offense instead? I hate when the other team has to punt me the ball.
Yeah, can he be like a wide receiver 3 instead? And then beyond that, as far as notable picks, they grabbed a couple of running backs on day 3. The more notable of the two would be Bhayshul Tuten, out of Virginia Tech, the speediest of the running backs from this year's class. So that's interesting. I think that, other than ETN, they probably needed some more speed in that backfield. But, I'm not sure that basically if you draft Tuten, you got to be expecting an injury to one of Tank or ETN, I would think.
Yeah, I wasn't as high on Tuten as some people were. Like, I remember Lance Zierlein had him ranked ahead of Omarion Hampton. Like that's bonkers, man. But Tuten's a good prospect, and where the Jaguars got him is where I think he's more than justified. I thought Tuten would have been fine as a 3rd-round pick. It didn't really matter much to me, but I do think realistically Tuten's just a rotational back, which is fine because within his specialization he could be uniquely good. And in the Liam Cohen offense, especially if I don't think the offensive line is there for the Jags, they need another year on the working on the offensive line to get it. They merely need to find a Tristan Wirfs. So that is the difference between Tampa and Jacksonville to me right now. But I could still see Tuten ripping off big plays on a lot of those Bucky Irving carries. In fact, I think a lot of running backs could rip off a lot of big plays on a lot of those setups that they had for Bucky Irving because the Tampa Bay offensive line was murdering people. So the idea that like the Jacksonville offensive line will just, or the Jacksonville running game will just take off now, I don't take as a given unless they give the ball to Travis Etienne. However, even though I still think Travis Etienne even though I still believe Etienne's like clearly the running back 1 on that team and one of the most talented running backs in the NFL, he never in theory was supposed to be a workhorse. Even in theory, ETN was supposed to be a guy you cap at like 15 carries a game, try to get him 3 or 4 catches rather than making him go to 20 carries. So to me, even if you believe in ETN, you need another, at least, ideally a better power back than Tank Bigsby, in my opinion. But ETN also has been objectively injury prone. Even the foot could have derailed his career and somehow didn't, but he's had like other things flare up since then. So if nothing else, Tuten is a very easy way for the Jaguars to replace what ETN gives them, more or less, without having to re-sign ETN at the end of the season if he has like more injury problems.
Right. So that they'll just kind of run with it and what ends up being his contract year. Let's go to the Raiders. Obviously made a splash by taking Ashton Jeanty. I didn't think that they were going to do that. I thought that they would have been better served getting a receiver there. I thought that Tet would have made a little bit more sense, but I've kind of done some more digging, and I feel like that offensive line, it's not quite like the Tennessee example, where Tennessee's might actually be good, but the Raiders one might be at least league average, and that's not nothing. You don't want to spend a top 10 pick when you have just an absolutely terrible offensive line, but I guess the Raiders don't really qualify for that. They have Pete Carroll now. They have a more credible offense generally now that they have Geno Smith in there. Brock Bowers entering year 2. Jacoby Myers doing really well. And they were the worst run team in football last year. I think as a team, like 3.6 yards per carry. I think only the Jets had fewer rushing touchdowns, which was kind of like an insane stat when I was looking that up last week. But total rushing yardage, and you look at the other guys on that depth chart, like they needed a running back, and this was a good year to do it. Good year to get a guy like Ashton Jeanty. Beyond that, Jack Bech, physical guy, going to them in the late second. They get a big fast guy in Dante Thornton out of Tennessee a little bit later on. JJ Pegues out of Auburn and Ole Miss, fun player.
Is that what it is? Pegues?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm gonna have to ask you about every pronunciation case like this, because before I was like Pegways. So I think Pegues is good though. That was a good pick.
He's fun. Like that was a guy that like Auburn would occasionally use it as fullback when he was a freshman.
He's gonna ruin Ashton Jeanty's fantasy value.
That would be
Jeanty's gonna lose like the new Zach Crockett, if you will.
Yeah, that would be
gain some weight.
Monkey's paw moment. But beyond that, I guess Tommy Millott out of Montana State is gonna
I like that pick too.
To receiver.
I mean, he can run.
Yes. Yeah. I remember this is neither here nor there, but like week 0 in college football, there's always like a weird slate, and Montana State was on it. So I had to, so I had to look into Montana State and what their deal was. And, all the passing numbers were pretty terrible for him, but that dude can move. That guy is absolutely an athlete. So late 6th for him. So interesting draft from the Raiders. I think like you probably like by and large give it a mostly inconclusive grade. A lot of developmental, not a ton of guys that I think are going to help right away, but interesting names scattered throughout this draft class for the Raiders.
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to use Bech. I feel like they're a little crowded in the underneath and in the slot. It's like Thornton, in my opinion, might have more work to do initially, just because Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers rarely push more than like 8 yards downfield, especially not 10 yards downfield in a route. So Thornton's there to clear out space. I don't really have any interest in him in fantasy. I actually have more interest in Millott, whatever it is. But that's like a fringe dynasty kind of concern.
We got a question here from Michael. Much appreciated, Michael, for the super chat here.
Thank you, Michael.
Cutting to the chase here. Everyone wants to know about our rookie RB evaluations post draft. Who is the better rookie draft value, and where is the sweet spot for guys like RJ Harvey and Caleb Johnson?
John, I almost have to recuse myself on. I literally might be higher on RJ Harvey than anyone, and I might be lower on Caleb Johnson than anyone, even though I still think Caleb Johnson is fine. There were people who were saying like he's better than Judkins, he's he's almost as good as Jeanty, and it's like, nah, he's not as good as Judkins. He might be like a good Najee Harris impersonator. I'll give him that, and that's all Pittsburgh might want. But to me, RJ Harvey is total killer. I think RJ Harvey is going to be one of the best offensive players in the NFL. So I'm way too high on Harvey and too low on Johnson, but that's how I see it.
Yeah, like right now, Caleb Johnson is going like 3.5 rounds higher than Jaylen Warren. So the draft community really does do the Toy Story meme sometimes, where it's just like, I'm done playing with you. But
I think Warren
Warren, and then
I think Warren easily has the head start there, and they'll get Johnson going more as time passes. But Warren is just a plug and play thing to them. They don't have to worry about the game plan when he's on the field at all. No matter power concepts, passing downs, doesn't matter.
If the draft order sticks the way it is, where Johnson is going that much higher than Jaylen Warren, then I'm going to have a lot of Jaylen Warren, a lot more than I expected at the very least. And then RJ Harvey.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say to Michael, for what it's worth, I have Caleb Johnson as 11th overall in my post-draft dynasty ranking. So yeah, I definitely don't mean to sound low on him. It's just that I have RJ Harvey at 5.
Yeah, and I think that makes plenty of sense. So you to give a teaser to the people if they want to read your article. Jeanty in a tier by himself up top. Hampton, Judkins, Tetairoa McMillan comprise tier 2, and then you've got RJ Harvey there leading off the third tier. And I think that makes sense. I think that everyone was kind of circling the Broncos as the team where whichever running back they get, we're going to boost them up. And I think it's particularly interesting that they didn't go running back in the first round and then still managed to get a guy like Harvey, who I think is kind of ready, plug and play. Like, I think he's going to be an excellent pick this year. Let's jump on over and kind of do a rookie ADP review now that we've got a couple drafts in the sample. These tournaments opened up on Monday, so things are still going to be pretty fluid, but we'll get into that. But before that, we've got a message from our friends over at Circa. While your favorite team is making a splash in the draft, you can be making your splash at the ultimate pool party at Circa Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. Stadium Swim is your year-round destination for nonstop fun. With 3 levels, 6 pools, and a massive 143-foot screen to catch every game in every season, it's the place to be. Soak up the sun and party all night 365 days a year at Stadium Swim, only at Circa Resort and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. Secure your spot now at circalasvegas.com. All right. We were just talking a little bit about Ashton Jeanty in the more abstract sense. In the more real sense, Ashton Jeanty is a first-round pick in drafts. His ADP 9.3 now in the draft that I'm in. This drafter got him at a slight value at 10. I've seen him go as high as like 5, though. So with I guess I've drawn this parallel. I want to see what you think about it. But last year, this time, Marvin Harrison is a first-round pick in best ball. He's going 10th, 11th. Everyone kind of had to make their decision. Fully maxed out as far as the price was concerned. He was going to have to absolutely crush, be the 6th best wide receiver in the game as a rookie in order for him to return value for his investors. Jeanty, kind of a similar deal. You're going to have Saquon, Bijan, and Jahmyr Gibbs going ahead of him in most cases. So we're needing RB4 returns, and we can't have too low of a floor like the way that Marvin Harrison gave his folks a year ago. So where are you on Jeanty when the dust settles here and we see him as a certified concrete first rounder?
Yeah, I'm not concerned about any kind of like rookie letdown kind of thing. To me, the Harrison thing was unfortunate, but even as someone who didn't want to draft him there last year, I wouldn't blame his failure on him. It was kind of, in my opinion, the Cardinals drew Petzak, whatever his name is. I thought the offense they designed was the exact offense you would design if you wanted to sabotage Marvin Harrison rather than make him productive. And I think they succeeded pretty well with their plan, if so. But Jeanty, I don't think you can really screw up. There's no conditional thing with him other than really the offensive line, I guess you could say. But honestly, even if Ashton Jeanty somehow averages something like 3.7 yards per carry this year, I still think he will be a top 10, top 12 kind of fantasy return in PPR anyway, because look, the Raiders defense is just garbage, at least in the secondary. And in my opinion, the linebackers kind of suck too, but they will not be able to stop credible passing teams over big volume. I think with the kind of team that the Raiders have, the only way you can be competitive is to run the ball a lot on offense and blitz like hell on defense so that you can try to make the sample as small as possible against your bum corners so that they don't get exposed over a bigger sample. You need luck to play a bigger variable than talent. And even if, though, the Raiders can't hide those corners with the blitz, Jeanty, I think, will be on the field when they're playing catch up. And if Jeanty has to simply become an 80 catch running back, if the Raiders are just playing catch up from the second quarter every single day, every single game, that still doesn't bother me, because Jeanty can be either the 25 carry running back or the 10 catch running back. And I don't think he can be Austin Eckler if that's the game plan, or he can be whatever, Emmitt Smith. It doesn't matter to him.
Yeah. So for me, like the way I kind of summed it up in when I was recapping the first round, you can read that over on RotoWire. It's still evergreen. Those guys haven't gone anywhere. I feel like in Jeanty's case, yes, like you are paying full freight. You kind of need a huge season from him to where, he's at least top 5. But I feel like the floor for him is really high. I don't believe in anyone else in that backfield. I think he's going to get as much work as possible. Like you said, kind of whether it's a lot in the pass game, a lot of carries, one way or the other. I think like it's not going to blow up the way that like the Harrison pick did a year ago. I think that at worst, he's still a top 10 guy.
John, I think I'm remembering correctly when I say even Trent Richardson had a valuable fantasy rookie season just because he got so many touches. I'm not worried about Jeanty being Trent Richardson, but it's just one of those things. Or even you look at LaDainian Tomlinson's rookie year. He averaged only like 3.6 yards per carry his rookie year because the Chargers were just so atrocious. And not to assume Jeanty will be that bad, but also this Raiders offensive line is not as bad as that Chargers one was. And I think, it's a unique category that Jeanty should be in this year as far as usage from scrimmage. And the only players who will be near that category of usage will be Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, I guess. And there's probably some other running back, maybe Christian McCaffrey and whoever I'm forgetting. But it's only like 5 or 6 running backs who can even potentially get into that category of usage.
Exactly. So it looks wheels up. So I feel like if I'm getting a late first round pick, I'm going to be getting a decent.
I took him at 9 at my first post draft best ball draft yesterday. I took Jeanty at 9 and Hampton at 40.
I've had the 3rd and 4th pick so far. I've taken Gibbs in both.
Fair enough. I won't hate that.
Know. Maybe it's crazy, maybe it's not, but that's how I'm going. Let's see. Yes, next up, we talked about Travis Hunter and the volatility there. I think we summed it up last week a little bit too, or over the last couple of weeks, where it's like in redraft, like definitely kind of not going to be interested at cost. Best ball, like you definitely see the case because the upside weeks could be pretty crazy, but yeah, the volatility there is tough to justify as a late 3rd, early 4th. You said Omarion Hampton, you took him at 40. He would be the next guy up on the rookie ADP. So that's not too different from where he was going before, if memory serves. But you could correct me, of course, if I am wrong on that.
Hampton at 40.
Yes,
I think he was in roughly that range. Yeah, he didn't move a whole lot, or not yet anyway.
So what did you think of that pick? What do you think of, sort of if you could put your Chargers hat on, like what's the vision behind getting a guy like Hampton?
It's a little aggressive at 40. I think it's not we don't need Najee Harris to totally tank for Hampton to pay off there, but at the very least it might be one of those things, kind of like, do you remember Jonathan Taylor's rookie year where I think he was going in the 3rd round that year, but the Colts were doing this thing where they're like, oh no, Marlon Mack, and we got to have Naheem Hines on the field, of course, for some reason, and they slowly worked him in relatively, and it was a rough first half of the year for the Jonathan Taylor, the people who were depending on him to kind of like carry them as like a running back 2 or whatever that year. But if you made it far enough to make the playoffs, then he, went nuts at the second half. And I absolutely think, not that I see Hampton as good of a prospect as Taylor, but Hampton should catch more passes than Taylor at the NFL level, while being plenty of a big play threat in his own right as a runner. So I think Hampton's upside is largely like the Jeanty case. It's largely driven by the volume potential. We saw North Carolina, Hampton can take 30 touches a game. He's fine. So there aren't many running backs that you can say that about. And so particularly in best ball, or particularly in something like NFFC, like a tournament kind of setup at the end, Hampton could have that really unique clinching late season upside, but it is sometimes easier said than done to get that far in the first place.
Yeah, no, I think with Harris, like, he doesn't alter your where you're taking Hampton in Dynasty. It's a 1-year deal.
No.
And we know who Najee Harris is at this point. He's a guy that I think is going to be, similar to what we've said for years in Pittsburgh. And I'm not trying to draw the Jaylen Warren, Omarion Hampton comparison necessarily, but Harris is going to get like that grunt work, like the dirty work. Like he is going to get, a role in this offense. Obviously they made a point to grab him in free agency, but like, he's not going to be doing like the stuff that's going to have like these huge payoffs. Like I think Hampton, like he'll basically just be a tenderizer, and then Hampton just kind of gets to kind of rake behind him. And I think ultimately, like over the course of the season, Hampton takes off and like you said, like have that like real kind of nice finishing burst in December when he kind of like really takes over as the guy. And it very well could happen earlier than that. But regardless, I think with the upside detail being what it is, and I think the Chargers offense, we can expect to be even better possibly in year 2 of this system. I think that this, I'll be
they didn't know going into the draft that they'd be able to get Hampton. They might have thought that the Broncos would take him at 20. So the Chargers didn't necessarily sign Harris with any kind of commitment to him, other than the fact that his salary is fully guaranteed for this year. They might have been kind of like, look, man, if we get Hampton, you're getting, you're getting like 100 carries this year. It's possible. It's not likely, but it is possible.
Yeah. I thought it was also kind of funny that like both Harris and Hampton kind of are like that thunder element. Like they're not like the greatest pass catchers. Like Harris had like 1 million drops these last couple of years, so he's gotten worse as a pass catcher over time. Although I'm sure the quarterback play probably had some real ducks for targets.
You get a little rattled after a certain amount of that. Yeah,
I would think so. But Hampton is kind of like the speedier pass catching option between the two of them, even though like conventionally you look at his numbers.
He might be the better power runner too. That's the thing. Is like if it gets to a certain point and they just need yardage, they won't be able to lie afterwards that like, well, we thought Harris was as good as Hampton. It's like, if the money's on the table, you're putting in Hampton.
Yes. No, he has a lot more juice, and Harris, for the 1,000 yards in each of his first 4 seasons thing that Troy Aikman rightly said, who gives a crap? I think, Harris just doesn't have the burst, the speed that Hampton does. Certainly not at this juncture. Next guy up will be one Tetairoa McMillan, ADP of 43.1. Is he someone that you kind of have to, by extension, believe in the Panthers and what they did down the stretch last season to justify taking him, in the middle of the 4th round?
I don't think so. It is tough for me though. Even as a McMillan fan, I don't want to pay that price, man. Taking McMillan in the 4th round is crazy. Underdog people are crazy taking receivers as high as they do. It's just absolutely crazy. But McMillan is a good prospect in general, and one who I think the Panthers, they have to use McMillan in the sense that if they are so much as just attempting, boundary shots at all, especially downfield or especially in the red zone, McMillan's just the guy you go to there. The defense knows it. It's not like the defense is going to leave, a 5'9" corner on him. They're going to say like, okay, we got to get the jam on McMillan and safety. You got to make sure you're ready to jump on it if this guy misses or like slips or something. And like he'll have the defensive attention, but I also think Canales has shown that he's going to commit to a run heavy offense no matter what. And it's like if that run game, if Hubbard has another season this year, like last year, or if the Carolina run game in general is really good, defenses at some point will have to sort of say to the safety who was previously, over the top of McMillan, like, watch McMillan, but also try to make sure they don't get us on that carry that they got us on the last couple drives. Or maybe the safety doesn't even need to be told. He'll just start thinking he'll just try to play hero ball thing. Like, okay, I gotta be ready to stop this Hubbard run this time. And if that single coverage happens, they're going to McMillan. Like if they suspect there's single coverage, or if Bryce Young sees it, he can audible at the line. That's a play that McMillan's really tough to stop on. And not to assume Bryce Young is going to throw so many as 20 touchdowns this year, but in Underdog's half-point PPR scoring, a guy like McMillan could gain a little bit on the wide receiver pack. If guys who are normally in full-point PPR scoring around McMillan with like 120 catches but 6 touchdowns, McMillan might be able to gain a little bit on those guys in the year-end rankings. And it's a justifiable thing, especially if you're, I don't know what makes more sense, like going wide receiver heavy and taking McMillan, or taking McMillan as your wide receiver. I don't think you want to take McMillan as your wide receiver one. So I feel like you almost have to be going wide receiver heavy to take him in a coherent build. And if you're doing that, and if you're, hedging your risks appropriately, I don't see anything wrong with it. I don't know if I have the guts to take a whole lot at that price.
Yeah, I guess like a hero RB build where you grab a running back in the first round, and then your next 3 picks include McMillan with your 4th round selection. It's funny because like we talked about McMillan when we were looking at ADP like right after the combine, and he's gone up about half a round. And I remember at the time being like, well, I'm not taking him over Sutton or Odunze. So now that we have to take him over guys Sutton. Like, okay, but I
don't know about Odunze though.
I'm just saying that now, like the question is not those guys; it's you're taking him over Xavier Worthy, Devontae Smith, Jameson Williams, and Zay Flowers. And
I'd take him over all of them, but Zay. In Underdog, at least. In full-point PPR, it's a little tougher. I could see McMillan only catching like 70 passes this year. It's just I think he might score 10 times and have, like 1,100 yards or something. And I think he'd more or less pay off. And some of those, if they're in multi-touchdown games, that could be important in best ball.
And to me, like it's a dangerous thing to be hung up on. But like I think that there's a level of confidence in Bryce Young's game now versus like a year ago. Like he looked like he didn't want to be out there a lot of the time. And like the Atlanta game at the end of the season, when they kind of ruined the Falcons season, he was kind of that dude. Like he looked like Alabama Bryce Young a bit in that game. And I'm not saying that it's going to transfer over 1-to-1 this year, but like I'm less scared of taking anything Panthers related this year as far as the passing game goes than I was a year ago. So there's that. And I took a look-see, and this isn't like an exact science either, but NFL Next Gen Stats had kind of like the Bryce Young heat map, broken down into quadrants of the field and where he's, average, above average, and below average. And I think where McMillan's going to be running his routes is actually kind of where Young is at his best, off the right side and in the deep and intermediate. So I don't know. I think that McMillan at least like fits where Young is kind of at his best. And I think that that's kind of interesting as well.
Yeah, I'm still very concerned for Bryce Young, but to be fair to him, if you think about the ways that he won at Alabama, like the situations in which he thrived at Alabama, it was like you said, like he would strike downfield, but it would kind of be like away from the defense. He'd be like attacking the corners and like downfield looks a lot of the time. But he kind of had he would need to do these touch passes that borderlined on pop gun velocity. And in the NFL, it's like I think it was as simple as, well, the receivers, of course, for the Panthers did not stress that part of the field very well. It was like they did not give Young the kind of receivers that were most analogous to the threats that he had at Alabama. But yeah, the other thing is like the defenders are just kind of bigger and faster, and some of these throws that worked at the college level aren't going to work in the NFL. So you need to work against that dynamic. One way you can is by synthesizing that vertical element by simply increasing the radius that Young can throw to, and it still be a catch. Like you can't make the field bigger. Tet McMillan is not, Randy Moss, but he can go up and catch a ball. And it's like, you can throw a pop gun armed throw to the corner and like lob it up in the air. And if that guy can go above the rim and snatch it, it's like, it doesn't matter that it's a pop gun throw anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Like just get it into the radius of Tet McMillan, and the radius is it's big. So,
way above the rim.
Yes. Slamming. So, I think that this should work. I think I'll just kind of, based on the receivers that are available here, like I'll be doing a decent amount of my receiver shopping down this aisle. And I think that, McMillan will have some good representation in there. Our guy Michael has a quick question about what to do if you have the third pick in your rookie draft. Obviously, kind of depends on what you need, running back or receiver. But between these guys, Omarion Hampton, Tet McMillan, TreVeyon Henderson, or Cam Ward. So I'm guessing this would be a super flex.
Well, if it's super flex, it's pretty tough to pass on Ward. If it's one quarterback, I have Hampton 3 and McMillan 4, but within the same tier. So I guess I'd say if you can determine running back or receiver as the bigger need, you might use that as the basis to pick between them.
There we have it. Next up, this one I haven't done a ton of or as much thinking on it as I did some of the other like first round guys. But TreVeyon Henderson going to New England. What did you make of that? His ADP checks in at 56, so like a middle of the fifth round type of guy. Now at this stage, I don't think that's too different. Maybe even a slight slide from where he was going pre-draft. Obviously, Ramondre Stevenson's there. Stevenson fumbles. Henderson famously does not. I don't know. I'm a big Henderson guy, so I'm trying to be. I'm almost like trying to recuse myself from this situation. But what do you think of Henderson at the new ADP?
I need Henderson to fall a little bit from before, but it looks like he will. So I'm curious to see if he might fall further yet. If we might see him stabilize as more of like a 8th round kind of pick or something, and then I'll be able to think about it again. But for year one, I think it's actually kind of tough for Henderson to get a fast start. I think he'll be consistently explosive and consistently successful in general, but I don't know if Henderson easily plays more than like 25 snaps in a given game until I guess Stevenson or Gibson gets hurt, which of course could happen. And in best ball, especially when you got a big portfolio, you have to consider things like that. And sort of if you're picking all the running backs but Henderson in whatever range he's in, and you got a bunch of teams, even if you're not confident in his ability, as I am not confident in his ability to get on the field in like a big snap count, injuries happen. And if Gibson or Stevenson gets hurt, we would probably, in that case, all wish we had more Henderson shares.
So, I mean, do you have any kind of thoughts on, now that Vrabel's there, now that Drake May's in year 2, that they get some help on the offensive line with the Will Campbell pick, like any sort of kind of read on the carry distribution? Like, is it going to be similar to Hampton, where like we're going to have potentially a frustrating first half of the season? Could that frustration linger throughout the course of the season if Stevenson has a good year? Like, just kind of, what is your general sense of this Patriots backfield right now?
Well, I might be wrong, but I think Stevenson and Gibson are both good players, and I think as much as you want not just Stevenson, but also Gibson to fumble less. Some of Stevenson's fumbles last year, I think, were very obviously because he was trying to just save the team, because the whole offense was just sinking all the time. And he was like, okay, I guess I gotta like do some hero thing. And running backs like Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry fumble more than most running backs because they take way more hits than most running backs, and it takes a lot more defenders to bring them down than most running backs. And if you up the number of defenders hitting you, you're also upping the number of of defenders punching at the ball. So I think Stevenson will be coached specifically by Vrabel to like, look, man, if they got you by the legs, go down, or like, unless they're munchkins, go down, because there's going to be a third and a fourth and a fifth guy coming in, and they're going to be punching at your face and your hands. So just get down. And if Stevenson isn't doing that stuff, I think he's a conventionally just broadly useful running back, because he can play passing downs. He's elusive despite being slow. Like he's like flexible, and he can kind of shake people in short spaces, and he runs with some power, of course. So I think the way Vrabel wants to run an offense is running have a dominant run game that has volume, because you want the starter to be basically the guy who kind of gets you the win, and you want the second guy to be able to give you enough resources to put it away in the second half. So these old school guys who want to run a lot, they want the volume running because they see it as like the detail that like zips it up at the end. They're like, this is our closer, if you must think of it that way. So I think that Stevenson and Henderson, and maybe also Gibson, all do quite a bit for the Patriots, because I think their offensive line will be better, probably a lot better. And I think Drake May is good personally. So I think this offense will be just generally good and pretty adaptable, but always ground based. So if Gibson gets hurt, Henderson's always playing, is how I see it. If Stevenson gets hurt, Henderson's always playing.
Okay. All right. So that's a good summation there. But at the ADP, like you're saying, probably needed to go a little bit lower, but before you're diving in.
Probably, just because we'll see how many drafts I do without getting shares. Again, if the diversification need is real after a certain point, but it's just as simple as like, if there are 30 snaps a game for Henderson, then I think he pays off.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Next up, we've got an interesting quartet. It's a straight running back run for 4 picks. You get Quinshon, Judkins, and then you get 2 vets and James Conner and Dave Montgomery, and then RJ Harvey. All of those guys with an ADP between 67.8 and 70.6 over on Underdog. Does the market have that order correct?
I don't know if I want James Conner in that range. I love James Conner, but I like him a lot more at last year's price than this year's price. I'm not taking Conner over Harvey, or at least I don't know. I got to draft something like 6 Harvey shares before I take Conner over Harvey, and I don't even really want to take Harvey anymore. I'm like I feel entitled to getting him in the 13th round. I'm like, no fair, 6 is too high. But I think Quinshon Judkins is the tough one for me there. Like I as much as I don't want to take Harvey there, I guess I just will start to have to again, because I do think Harvey's pretty much the man, but I also think Judkins is the man. And it's one of those, it's a little bit like the TreVeyon Henderson problem, in that the Browns have a pretty crowded backfield, and Jerome Ford specifically is a guy who probably will be playing something like 30 snaps per game for the Browns. So with and also Ford mostly on passing downs, or taking the most of the passing downs between himself and Judkins. In my opinion, that's not because Judkins can't play the passing downs. It's just that Ford's a good player, and he's shown that he's got the trust of Stefanski. They know they can plug him in there, so they're going to. But also Stefanski, not that he's old school the way whatever Vrabel or Harbaugh might be, but Stefanski's very much at his, when he has his discretion on it, or when it's his choice to make, he will make it a run heavy 2 tight end offense. Jim Coventry pointed this out, and I think he's right to suspect that the Browns kind of shifted to a 3 wide offense because of Deshaun Watson and his preferences, as opposed to Stefanski's preferences. the Browns are moving on from Watson. So I think we're going to see a lot of 2 tight end looks, a lot of running the ball. And although, again, Stefanski's not a true old school guy, he does want those 2 running backs because he's thinking, hey, the easiest win for us is one where we're running it 40 times. And so we will always kind of try to have we will always try to have the personnel on hand prepared to do that if the opportunity arises.
So in Ford's case, how dead is that pick if you have a lot? I may or may not be asking for myself. I have him on, looks like I have like 3 shares of Jerome Ford where he was going as RB41.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Okay.
I don't know. I think Ford was going to play. He's going to play like 30 snaps a game no matter what. I think Sampson's the one who's not going to play at all.
I do think that as well. I think Sampson was an odd pick, the same way that drafting 2 backup quarterbacks was odd from Cleveland. But I think everyone that's listening to this podcast has heard more than enough about that. We do have a question from our guy, Tyler. This guy's first dynasty team, took over an orphan team, only really has Achane with no real backups. Got Omarion Hampton with the 7th pick, was offered TreVeyon Henderson with Chimere or David Montgomery for Devin Achane. Should he take the depth or hang on to Achane? I'm probably keeping Achane. The Chimere detail is interesting.
It's a win now thing
Henderson
to me.
Too.
Like if you're competing now, which it sounds like it's not, if it's an orphan team, then I could see Chimere. But to me, Chimere is a 1-year rental. And if you don't land that shot in the 1 year, it's kind of you never had it. So or rather, the trade at that point is simply Henderson for Achane, which I would not want to make.
No, I wouldn't either. So I'd hang on to the Hampton Achane pairing. I think that's a nice way to kind of turn around your dynasty teams.
Good
fortunes. Yes, love that at 7. That's a nice grab there. Any like kind of last lingering, or I guess more of like a direct look at what RJ Harvey's projection is now. We talked about, oh man, he is a good bit more pricey to acquire in drafts now than he was a week ago, certainly. But what is the Mario Puig take on how he fits with Denver? How good could this be?
I can't claim to know what Sean Payton is ever thinking. He's a borderline eccentric kind of coach, but definitely a really smart, uniquely smart offensive thinker. So I think the frustrating thing about the Payton offense, the Broncos the last couple of years, is that even worse than with the Saints, he's been rotating these running backs on an unpredictable basis, and sort of like it's almost as he was leaving little just media trails to get people worked up about all of the players except Javonte for some reason. But there's like all these people are like, Jaleel McLaughlin's going just nuclear this year. Wait till you see this, or like Jacksonville is Le'Veon Bell or whatever. I don't know what people are thinking of, but there was all this hype for these guys who just aren't that good. Even though I do think Estime could be okay, I don't think McLaughlin's much more than a trinket. But the difference is RJ Harvey can do all the stuff that whatever Peyton or whoever else might have gotten themselves hopped up on about McLaughlin, like, oh, he's such a joker. You can do Darren Sproles stuff with him. All right, well, RJ Harvey can actually do Darren Sproles kind of stuff. Jaleel McLaughlin cannot. So that's the biggest problem with why it didn't work. And I think, to be fair to Peyton, it's the temptation to rotate your running backs constantly and seemingly arbitrarily is probably a tempting thing to do when they all kind of suck and you're trying to find some kind of spark somewhere. Harvey is the spark. You don't go looking for the spark after you put Harvey on the field. You go like, oh, that was good. Do that again. So I see Harvey as a different looking player, different specific traits, but it's pretty much just Alvin Kamara with the early Saints is what I see is like that kind of utilization. Not as many catches, more carries, I guess is the thing, but I see, Pro Bowl potential year 1.
And so we think that, based on what else is in that Denver backfield, that he pretty much takes it over pretty,
Yeah, you don't want to put 30 carries on Harvey. I think ideally you could do something like 15 to 16 carries per game with Harvey, And if I'm right, that estimate can do something, then it's the power work, the stuff that takes the most hits. You don't need Harvey taking the thankless work. He's too good for it. So that's the split that I see. But I think that would be more than enough, including in the 6th round, because if Harvey gets, I think if Harvey gets 12 carries a game and like 3 catches per game, he might pay off in the 6th, especially in best ball when you don't need to guess correctly ahead of time when he has his big games. But if Harvey gets 15 plus carries and 3 plus catches per game, I think he's a candidate to average over 5 yards a carry. I think he's also 5 yards a carry and like, I don't know, 8 yards a target or something. And I also think he might have a high touchdown rate per touch, because when the Broncos do get into scoring range, as much as Harvey might also be the reason they get there, like if you need a clinching factor, it's him. It's like when you need the yardage, Harvey goes on the field is how I see it. As I think that the Broncos are stuck in that situation with him on the team and no one capable of doing the things he can.
No, exactly. And there are a ton of other rookies, obviously, that are going shortly after this range, but it's a long off season. We got a lot of content to fill, and believe me, we will. But I think instead of going to the next guys up, which would be Matthew Golden and Caleb Johnson, I want to get your thoughts on where are you going with your late round darts, and not specifically Jackson Dart, of course, but you're
not that one. I'm not in
No.
a 6 quarterback. I don't know what format that would be. So the late round darts, this might be funny to any long time listeners, readers. I can't stop picking Marshawn Lloyd because he goes in the last couple rounds now. It's like I was critical of him last year as a people try to sell him not just as a sleeper pick. They're like, this guy's gonna take the offense. It's his now. And that was always ridiculous. But now people are doing predictably the thing where they overreact. And especially when to be extremely fair to Lloyd, he was literally hurt all year.
Yeah, he didn't play.
Appendicitis. So I don't understand why his fans have bailed on him now. And like I'm like one of the people who are still picking him. That's just that's crazy. That's chasing the jangling keys when someone throws them. And we don't do that, John. This is not a Jangling Keys podcast. De'Ami Brown, I think it's hard to tell, in my opinion, how much Liam Cohen truly hates Gabe Davis. But like there was that comment, like I can imagine Cohen being like such a film guy, like he literally just remembers who he sees on the field and like on the snap counts, and doesn't really know about the histories of the players involved. But he named Parker Washington and De'Ami Brown ahead of Davis. I assumed De'Ami Brown was on equal footing to Davis, but yeah, the Parker Washington thing, I guess I got to keep a close eye on. But the reason I like Brown either way is I think he's different from the other two, and especially downfield. De'Ami Brown's speed stands out a little bit. So if the Jags get their run game going a little bit, and if Trevor Lawrence is just kind of ripping it, getting loose, I think De'Ami Brown could be kind of like what he was late in the year with the Commanders, where he wasn't exactly beating guys, but if the defense sort of left the quarterback a second too much to scan the field, and if you gave him some room downfield, it's like he'll make that play downfield like he did at North Carolina. It's just De'Ami's like a little bit fragile. He's not a complete receiver, but in that one capacity, I think he's good, and I don't think defenses will have much bandwidth to pay attention to him at that point, so he might kind of sneak up on them. But otherwise, Chig Okonkwo, I'm taking him as tight end 3 pretty much every draft, which I guess I got to stop doing that.
Okay, I need to start doing that. I went way overboard going into the 2023 season with Chig Okonkwo, and that didn't work out, but not his fault. But I think the new year, new price, new quarterback. I'm gonna have to take a look there. Of course, among the rookies, like the last round guys that I'm gonna be interested in, I was a huge Joe Mixon proponent last year. I thought that he was going to do really well in Houston. He did until he didn't. Obviously, if you took him, he disappointed you in the playoffs, but he also probably had a big part in you getting there. I'm a little bit in on the hedge on Woody Marks as a last round guy. I think that Mixon, it could be the cliff could be here for him, and if so, I'm not worried about Dameon Pierce or Jawar Jordan Shout out Uncle Ted. But I feel like Marks is someone that I'm going to be taking a look at. And I think everyone kind of thought that the Bears were going to be, I thought that they were going to trade up for Ashton Jeanty. They didn't touch running back until the 7th round, and that could mean that they're going to be looking to make a move for a veteran in some shape or form, either via free agency or the trade. But as it stands, Kyle Monangai out of Rutgers in the 7th round, I think I'm a little bit interested too in him as a last round guy.
Yeah, I like Monangai quite a bit, actually. It was one of those things like you didn't rank him higher in the pre-draft stuff because we couldn't tell if he was even going to get drafted. So Monangai, if he's on a team and if he's getting snaps, I am pretty interested in buying in. He's not a star or anything. He probably has his strengths are largely replaceable, but I don't know if that's the case with the Bears. Like he might be the only guy who provides the sort of things that he does on that roster. And more specifically, in some contrast to DeAndre Swift, Monangai is very naturally rugged. He's a small running back, but he's built with a lot of natural anchor. And so he's one of these guys who he doesn't need to be that strong. He can kind of just slip off tacklers sometimes because they kind of just miss or like they hit the wrong part of him. So he's got good anchor and good 10-yard burst. Monagai's 4.6 or whatever, of course, is either average or below. Or it's below average, but his 10-yard split was slightly above average. And if you have anchor and burst, that's a lot to work with right there. And he never fumbles. So I think not that I'm not saying like he's going to steal work from Swift, but Swift can only do so much in the first place, even in theory. So there's slack after Swift, even if Swift does a great job and stays healthy all year, which, whatever. And I don't think Roschon Johnson's any good. So I think Monangai, if they don't sign some other person or trade some other running back, I definitely like Monagai's chance. I might have to start taking him in like the 18th round of best ball drafts the longer the Bears go without adding anybody.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, our guy Best Ball on call in the chat says that Monangai and even Roschon Johnson very free in
Fair
drafts.
enough. Yeah, I bash Roschon, but like he is also pretty close to the field.
And I went to Georgia. Like, I love DeAndre Swift. I don't think he's that good at this point in the NFL. Like, I just don't. Like, I'm not that worried about him. Like, just okay, we got the Ben Johnson coaching staff. We got all this and that. Like, wheels up for him. It's like, I don't like. I've seen a lot of that on Twitter this week, and I'm just like, brother, like, you gotta.
He can do remember
the last couple of years?
Like, he's good at some things and not others, and like he gets hurt. It's he's a useful player. I just am not convinced that. Look, the Bears need to do power run concepts. DeAndre Swift cannot run power concepts like Jahmyr Gibbs, let alone like David Montgomery. And I'm not convinced Roschon can be that guy, even though he's probably the most like power default guy they have. I think it's more just like he's the slowest one, so he has to be power based. I really think if they don't get anyone else, Monangai could kind of just get his foot in the door and never really go away.
I think so too. So I'm going to be grabbing some Monangai shares late in drafts. And then I got another one for you. This guy had such like a fascinating year or last like 18 months. Ollie Gordon was so good at Oklahoma State in 2023, like so sick, like to the point where if you played college fantasy football, like it was a real question. Like, were you taking Ollie Gordon first or were you taking Ashton Jeanty first? Obviously the Jeanty question was correct, or the Jeanty answer was right. But Gordon had a terrible season last year at Oklahoma State. I think going to Miami is kind of interesting though, because I think that they lack a goal line type of guy. And I think that you had a comp for him as LeGarrette Blount that I think is kind of interesting if Miami's an offense that can get into those short yardage situations. And again, he's someone that you would be using like your last pick on.
Yeah, they might imagine Alexander Madison as their power guy, but I don't know. Madison might just be better off at fullback or something because he can block and he can catch and he can get like short amounts of yardage, but the explosiveness isn't there. Like if Madison breaks a tackle, he just gets caught again right away. Whereas Gordon, that LeGarrette Blount threshold, that exact line there, it's like he might be on it where yeah, he's kind of slow, but he's just enough not slow that the second defender doesn't catch him or like has to take a compromised angle where Gordon's power gets to play in a little bit and just knock him off with a stiff arm or something like that. Like, Ollie Gordon is not a bum. He didn't get all those big games at Oklahoma State by being slow and weak. Like, it's not that. I think more so Gordon just needs room to build up his speed, and once he does, then it's like the defense would admit it's in some trouble. It's easier to stop him early than later. And the problem is, I don't know if Mike McDaniel has any idea what he's doing with the ground game there.
Yeah, because I fell for it with Jalen Wright a little bit last year myself.
Well, I don't see that as a huge deal. I feel like McDaniel doesn't understand or has to this point not understood just the physical effects of a ground game and the way like the physical traits of the running backs and the offensive line interact with the defense and defensive personnel. And specifically, he doesn't seem to understand that tiny running backs get hit worse. They don't wear down a defense the way a big running back will. In a weak small running back can't do a power. They can't just do a power concept. You can't just say, well, just put the small guy on the field for the power concept. It's a power concept. It's in the blocking. It's not in the ball carrier. It's like, no, it's in the ball carrier too. You want to leverage the power with more power. You want to overwhelm the defense, not diminish yourself in the effect. So maybe McDaniel has picked up on that there's a place for real power running in a football game. And if McDaniel commits to that, I still believe in McDaniel's like creativity to come up with a good idea. It's more like getting him to pay attention to things that matter first. But not to change it from Gordon too much, but real quick, I actually think Devin Neal is definitely worth picking too. He went pretty late. I would definitely take Devin Neal over like Brashard Smith or especially DJ Giddens. I don't take DJ Giddens in the 15th round, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like the Neal landing spot. Like, obviously New Orleans, like for anyone like trying to like find like the Kendre Miller victims of yore who like where like Chimere's done. No, like Chimere's still gonna like be like the guy, but Devin Neal's actually good, and like even the coaching staff that drafted Kendre Miller hated him. Like, this is a new deal there in New Orleans. So I feel
Neal's so slick and everything's like easy for him. I really think he fell in the draft just because teams were like, oh, well, we can get him later or like some other bargain later. And it's like, just because Neal is not very obviously great at anything and merely good at everything doesn't mean it's easy to find guys like him. Like he's a plug and play player in my opinion. And if Miller's not capable or not ready, and if Kamara gets hurt, I think Neal's like a 40 snap running back in that offense.
And then lastly, like two vets with injury concerns that are podcast favorites that I'll just float out there is, hey, 18th round, see what happens. Nick Chubb goes at the end. I think he's working towards a comeback, and there's
he
going
can go to
Chicago.
Team.
Yes.
If Chubb goes to Chicago, we're all going to be like, oh no, we got to get him in the 10th round now or something.
So I think sooner than later for grabbing your Chubb picks in the 18th. I saw a video of him at his old high school, as he always does in the off season, lifting absurd amounts of weight over at Cedartown here in Georgia. And then Keaton Mitchell, obviously like a little bit,
man, I'm hoping
foggier,
really hope so.
But I think being almost 2 years removed by the time the season starts from his big injury,
you got to worry it's a Marcus Lattimore thing, maybe, where the Ravens are just kind of like trying to do right by him by paying him while he rehabs and stuff. But man, I really hope that's not it. And because if Keaton Mitchell is back, then that changes the Ravens a lot too.
It does. I think that his injury is like a little bit why things went sideways for them in the AFC Championship game a couple years ago, but we don't need to revisit that too much. Yeah, I just wanted to throw out some last round ideas for the listeners here after breaking down the early rookie ADPs. Now that we've got some drafts in the books, but that's going to do it for us here on this edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Again, if you're watching us on the live stream, check out the bottom of the screen. 15% off any RotoWire product. Just go to rotowire.com, use the code ROTO15, and bada bing, bada boom, you've got 15% off. Obviously, if you're listening, you just heard that as well. The link will also be in the show description. And a big thanks to our sponsors over at Circa as well. For Mario Puig, I'm John McKechnie. We ran out of time for the gorilla debate. That'll be it for another show. Thanks for listening.